Et parfois parents yo gen droit pas gen rien.
They feed them here with the food that Stop Hunger sent. The parents are at peace to send their children to school knowing that they will get something to eat. And it's very obvious once the children eat, and the joy and the contentment and the retention that they have, it has increased a lot.
Working on the front lines of human vulnerability. And I found myself in the places where people are fighting every day to survive and can't even obtain a meal. This red cup comes from Rwanda, from a child named Fabian, and I carry this around as a symbol really of the challenge and also the hope, because one cup of food a day changes Fabian's life completely. But what I'd like to talk about today is the fact that this morning, about 1 billion people on Earth, or 1 out of every 7, woke up and didn't even know how to fill this cup. 1 out of every 7 people. First, I'll ask you, why should you care, or why should we care? For most people, if they think about hunger, they don't have to go far back in their own family history, maybe in their own lives or their parents' lives or their grandparents' lives, to remember an experience of hunger. I rarely find an audience who go back very far without that experience. Some are driven by compassion, feel it's perhaps one of the fundamental acts of humanity, as Gandhi said. Others worry about peace and stability. We saw the food riots in 2008, what I call the silent tsunami of hunger, what exploded when food prices doubled overnight. The destabilizing effects of hunger are known throughout history. One of the most fundamental
just announced that we have done 50,000 meals.
Get enough food. Others think about,
you have 15 minutes to achieve that goal.
Will we be able to feed a population that will be 9 billion in just a few decades? This is not a negotiable thing. We'll have to eat. There's going to be a lot of people. This is jobs and opportunity all the way up and down the value chain. But I actually came to this issue. Picture of me and my 3 children. In 1987, I was a new mother of my first child and was holding her and feeding her when an image very similar to this came. And this was yet another famine in Ethiopia, one 2 years earlier had killed more than 1 million people. But it never struck me as it did that moment, because on that image, there was a woman trying to nurse her baby. And the baby's cry really penetrated me as a mother. And I thought there's nothing more haunting than the cry of a child that cannot be returned. The most fundamental expectation. And it was at that moment that I just was filled with the challenge and the outrage that actually not. This is one of those rare diseases that you don't have a solution. We know how to pretend that we didn't. We actually have technology. It's just, this is out of place at our time in history. These images are out of place. This is last week.
The first event was held at
Yet again,
today.
the face of
Well, the second was held
Some time ago, you said that.
In fact, what we know now is that every 10 seconds, we lose a child to hunger. This is more than HIV/AIDS, malaria, tuberculosis combined. And we know that the issue is not just production of food. One of my mentors in my former world, my hero. But today we're going to talk about access to food, because actually, this year and last year, and during the 2008 food crisis, there was enough food on Earth that doesn't produce kill it. So why is it And I also want to talk about what I call our new version. In 2008, Lancet compiled all the research and put forward the conclusion that if a child in its first 1,000 days from conception to 2 years old does not have adequate nutrition, the damage is irreversible. Their brains and bodies will be stunted. And here you see a brain scan of 2 children, one who had adequate nutrition, another neglected, and who was deeply malnourished. And we can see brain volumes up to 40% less in these children. And in this slide, you see the neurons, and the synapses in the brain don't form. And what we know now is this has huge impact on economies, which I'll talk about later, but also the earning potential of these children is cut in half in their lifetime. So this burden of knowledge drives it because and yet, in many places, a third of the children already facing life of learning. I'd like to talk about some of the things I've done. Some of the things I've learned, bringing my economic and trade knowledge, my experience in the private sector. I'd like to talk about where the gap is. But first I'd like to talk about the oldest nutritional method of breastfeeding. You may be surprised to know that a child could be saved every 20 seconds if there was breastfeeding life. But in Niger, for example, less than 7% of the children are breastfed for the first 6 months of life exclusively. In Mauritania, less than 3%. This is something that can be transformed with knowledge. This message, this word you want to come out, that this is not an old-fashioned way to exist. This is brilliant. So today we focus on not just passing out food, but making sure the mothers have enough enrichment and teaching them about breastfeeding. The second thing I'd like to talk about, if you were living in a remote village somewhere and your child was limp, and you were in a drought, or you were in floods, or you were in a situation where there wasn't adequate diversity of diet, what would you do? You would go to the store and get a choice of calibars, pick the right one for that. Well, I find parents out on the front line very aware that children are going down for the count. And I go to those shops, if there are any, or out to the fields to see what they can get, and they cannot obtain the nutrition. Even if they know what they need to do, it's not available. And I'm very excited about this because one thing we're working on is transforming the technologies that are very available in the food industry.
So, please give it up. Give it up to good work. Another $10 for you to go.
Exit your workstation and let the new group come in.
As what I call food for humanity. We did this with food technologies in India and Pakistan. Really about 3 years. But this is transforming 99% of get this. At about so I am convinced that if we can unlock the technologies that are commonplace in a richer world, to be able to transform foods. And this is climate change. It doesn't refrigerated, it doesn't need water, it's often lacking. And these types of technologies, I see have the potential to transform the face of hunger and malnutrition out on the front lines. The next thing I want to talk about is school feeding. 80% of the people in the world have no food safety net. When disaster strikes, the economy gets blown, people lose a job, floods, war, conflict, bad governance, all of those things, there is nothing to fall back on. And usually the institutions, churches, temples, other things do not have the resources to provide a safety net. What we have found in working with the World Bank is that the poor man's safety net, the best investment is school feeding. And if you fill the cup with local agriculture from small farmers, you have a transformative effect. Many kids in the world can't go to school because they have to go beg and find a meal, but when that food is there, it's transformative. It costs less than 25 cents a day, it's life. So what is most amazing is the effect on girls. In countries where girls go to school, offer a meal to girls in school, we see enrollment rates about 50% girls. We see a transformation in attendance by girls, and there was no argument because it's incentive. Families need the help. And we find that if we keep girls in school later, they'll stay in school until they're 16 and they'll get married if there's food in school. Or if they get an extra ration of food at the end of the week, it costs about 50 cents. We'll keep a girl in school and they'll give birth to a healthier child because the malnutrition is sent generation to generation. We know that there's boom and bust cycles of hunger. We know this. Right now in the Horn of Africa, we've been through this before. So is this a hopeless cause? Absolutely not. I'd like to talk about what I call our warehouses for hope. Cameroon, northern Cameroon, boom and bust cycles of hunger every year for decades. Food aid coming in every year when people are starving during the lean seasons. Well, 2 years ago, we decided let's transform the model of fighting hunger. And instead of giving out the food aid, we put it into food banks. And we said, listen, during the lean season, take the food out. You manage, the village manage these warehouses, and during harvest, put it back with interest, food interest. So add in 5%, 10% more food. For the past 2 years, 500 of these villages where these are have not needed any food aid. They're self-sufficient. And the food banks are growing and they're starting school feeding programs for their children by the people of the village. But they've never had the ability to build even the basic infrastructure or the resources. I love this idea that came from the village level, 3 keys to unlock that warehouse. Food is gold there. And simple ideas can transform the face, not of small areas, of big areas of the world. I'd like to talk about what I call digital food. Technology is transforming the face of food vulnerability. In places where you see classic famine, Amartya Sen won his Nobel Prize for saying, guess what? Famines happen in the presence of food because people have no ability to buy it. We certainly saw that in 2008. We're seeing that now in the Horn of Africa, where food prices are up 240% in some areas over last year. Food can be there, people can't buy it. Well, this picture, I was in Hebron in a small shop, this shop, where instead of bringing in food, we provide digital food, carved, in Arabic, and the women can go in and swipe and get 9 food items. They have to be nutritious, and they have to be locally produced.